Hi all, it's Dr. Sandy again, and here's another video on sensory processing. Today we'll talk about the senses of smelling and tasting, or the olfactory and gustatory sense. As we remember, we have 8 senses. We have the sense of touch, hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, vestibular, proprioceptive, and interoceptive. The sense of smelling is also called the olfactory sense, and the sense of tasting is also called the gustatory sense. So the olfactory sense helps us to discriminate between all sorts of different odors. Some of these odors are pleasant, some of them are foul smelling, some are strong, some are faint, some are dangerous, okay? And our sense of smell is also very closely linked to our limbic system, which is the system responsible for our emotions and our memory. This is why sometimes a certain smell or a certain food can remind us of an event, such as a holiday or some pleasurable or not so pleasurable event in our lives. Okay. So if you are somebody who is hypersensitive or over-responsive to smells, you may show that you have very strong reactions to certain smells. You might refuse to eat certain foods or even be in a room where certain foods are being eaten. You might decide if they like or dislike a person based on how they smell. These children may also refuse to eat lunch in the cafeteria because the smells are just too overwhelming for them. On the other hand, somebody who is under-responsive or hypo-responsive, they may not notice drastic changes in smells. They may not be able to notice a smell and tie it to a specific item, for example. They may show a strong preference for certain smells, okay? These are the students who might habitually smell objects with strong odors. These are the kids who might be walking up to somebody who has perfume on and taking a big whiff. They may like to smell markers, for example, or certain clothing or gasoline or certain smells that are strong, okay? And they also may not understand the difference between a safe versus a not safe or a dangerous smell. This can lead to safety issues. Just think about it. If you can't recognize that the smell of smoke means danger, or that the smell of something electrical or some metallic burning means danger, then you may not know to vacate or alert somebody, okay? By the same token, you may not smell or associate the smell of the gas on your gas range. You may not associate that smell with something dangerous, and you therefore might start a fire by going ahead and lighting your gas range. Okay, so we've got a few strategies to help the kids who are over-responsive or hypersensitive to smells. Okay, you want to keep the environment as fragrance-free as possible, if possible. And you want to give that student or those students the chance to sit in an area that's going to have the least odors. So next to an open window, or away from stronger smelling materials, okay? You also want to teach them coping strategies because we can't eliminate all sensory information from our environment. You can teach them to cover their nose. You can teach them and coach them on informing the teacher when something is unpleasant, if something that they smell is unpleasant. But we also want to kind of help them to desensitize themselves. For example, if a student is unwilling to go into the cafeteria and sit and be with their friends during lunchtime because of they're sensitive to the smells, we can encourage them to gradually get used to it, incrementally, okay? They can sit in the cafeteria for a short time and then they can move to another room, or they can sit near the cafeteria and just move it up incrementally so that we can help them learn how to accept it in small chunks. On the other hand, here are some strategies we can use for the students who are under-responsive or hypo-responsive. These are the kids who may be actually the sensory seekers for things that smell. Okay, so we want to provide activities that will stimulate their senses. Playing outdoors in nature, for example, there's a ton of smells out there. Using scented Play-Doh or scented slime or scented pencils, scented markers, etc. Have them engage in cooking activities using things that are strong smelling. We can even have them smell different herbs that have different scents. You could even have them play a game where they have to try to identify the smell. There are a few different games out there that you can have them smell a little container or something, or you can make your own using food extracts, lemon and vanilla, etc., onto a cotton ball, and then close their eyes and have them smell something and try to identify. Okay, have a lot of things that have some good scents available: lotion, soap, markers. There are some scratch and sniff stickers, for example, candles, or other scented items. Some more things you can do is you can set up a smelling station in your classroom. Fill it with have containers that have like cotton balls or poof balls that you've put a couple drops of essential oil or food extracts. You can also have scented spices with the cotton balls as well. You do want to have some safety strategies and teach these students how to to avoid ingesting harmful foods and harmful substances. Teach them how to read expiration dates. If they can't recognize the smell of sour milk or sour spoiled food, they need to learn how to read the expiration dates and what that means. They need to understand the meaning of danger labels on certain items, to be able to read the warnings on certain household chemicals, for example. They may need a visual reminder of things that are food versus not food, okay? Teach them how to spot bad smells and have them kind of like be able to communicate that something smells bad to you by using different body language or facial expressions. So let's move on to the gustatory sense, the sense of taste. The gustatory and the olfactory systems are very closely linked. And that is why some people actually turn down food based on how it smells, because and you can actually sometimes trick the food system, the sense of taste, into thinking something's going to taste good by having them smell a pleasurable scent before taking a bite of the food that they think they're not going to like. Okay, so when the gustatory sense is over or under responsive, you might see some disruptive behaviors. Okay, so for example, a student with an over-responsive gustatory system might eat a very narrow or limited range of food or refuse to try new foods. They might limit their food repertoire to a small variety of tastes or textures or temperature. They are the student that might dislike or be very aversive to brushing their teeth or complain about the toothpaste based on how it tastes. These children might have a very strong fear of the dentist. An under-responsive student might have a very strong preference for very strong flavors. These are the students that might eat or lick or chew inedible items, such as toys, their clothing, pencils, or other small objects. These are the students who love strong toothpaste flavors. They're going to love the vibrating toothbrushes. They might love going to the dentist. And these students will seem more alert after they've eaten strong flavors. However, they also might have frequent drooling as well. Some strategies for the over-responsive student, or the student who is averse or hypersensitive to gustatory input. You want to introduce them to texture and smells without the pressure of eating the food. Okay, so introduce them to a variety of foods without the expectation that they have to eat it. This can be some sensory-based play, using messy food play, using messy play such as finger painting with with condiments, for example, making crafts out of food items. I've enjoyed using broccoli florets as a paintbrush to get a nice texture, using condiments as the paint, for example. Okay. If you're going to introduce new foods, you want to introduce them outside of the regular meal times, because the last thing you want to do is have them associate mealtime with an aversive food. Okay. So you want to introduce them at a specific time of the day where they're actually working on, maybe you can even call it the new food time or new food session. When you're working with these kids to introduce new foods, you want to make sure that your environment and your demeanor are calm, because they're going to pick up on any emotions and any chaos in the environment that is going on. So try to stay calm yourself and keep the environment calm to help them to decrease their anxiety. We don't want to ever try to persuade or coerce a child into eating a new food. That's going to just increase their stress and lead to more food refusal. We want to make it so that they are offered the opportunities to try something new without the pressure. Again, if you're working with the kids on learning to accept increased interaction with new foods, you want to make that outside of food times, like we mentioned, outside of meal times, and try to make it a consistent time of each day to introduce that new food. This allows them to know to expect that and gives them some more structure to their day, which would further reduce sensory overload. Okay. When we're trying to introduce new foods, it helps to start with foods that they are already familiar with, that are their preferred foods, and then it can be modified or changed in little tiny ways. For example, if a child will only eat one brand of chicken nuggets, we can introduce different varieties, different brands of chicken nuggets, and pair them with the familiar food. So a McDonald's nugget is sitting next door to a Burger King nugget, for example, and have them either they can eat their preferred one, which is maybe the McDonald's one, for example, and touch the Burger King one or lick the Burger King one. Okay, so you just kind of like try to change. It's called food chaining, where you pair preferred foods and change it or modify it a certain way. It could be, if you're having something homemade, that you modify just a little bit what the coating is of the chicken nugget that you're making. If they like it coated with flour and a little bit of paprika, you can add maybe just a second spice in there that's not too overpowering, but just a little bit of it, and add different types as you go. Some kids you can chain it quickly. Some kids need to have very small, very, very slow incremental changes. You want to gradually progress through the steps of desensitization. And there's different levels of interaction with food. Sometimes you might consider yourself very successful if a child can accept seeing that food in the same room as them. Sometimes it might be successful if they can tolerate sitting at the same table with that food item on somebody else's plate. Then you can move towards, having the food item closer and closer to where it's on their plate, but they don't have any pressure to eat it again. Maybe you can have them move towards, okay, let's touch it. Let's smell it. Let's pick it up and lick it or hold it. Or maybe you can work towards holding it on their tongue for a count of 3 and then a count of 5. Maybe they can touch it to their teeth, and then maybe they can touch it, go from there to biting into it, but not biting a piece off. And then go from there to biting a piece off and disposing of it in the trash or on their plate. And then move from there to biting a piece off and holding it in their mouth for a few counts. And we can gradually work towards maybe biting it twice, which is kind of starting to work on chewing. And progress further and further into the possibility of taking a bite, chewing it, and swallowing it. Okay? Another thing is to keep in mind, some kids may be more willing to try new foods if they see their friends around them are eating the same food. They may feel that social pressure. Not every kid, of course. Some strategies we can use to help the kids who are under-responsive include maybe allowing them to add some more strong flavors to their meals. These kids might need a little Tabasco sauce on their rice dish, for example, or a squirt of lemon juice to give them that extra flavor input. Okay. These kids who are biting on clothes or non-edible items. We can introduce objects that you might see like for teething, for example, or chewy toys. There's something called jewelry, which is jewelry that can be chewed, that they can wear around their neck. There's also things that are called chewable pencil toppers for kids who like to bite on their pencil. We can buy them a pencil topper that goes on the tip of the eraser side of their pencil for them to chew on. Foods that offer some good chewing texture that are either crunchy, such as dry cereal or chips or dried vegetables and dried fruits, or things that are chewy. Chewing gum, if they know how to properly dispose of it. Chewy foods such as beef jerky. Twizzlers are good chewy candies. And then there's also, to add with the flavors, you can have some mint mouth spray or sour mouth spray. You can also do some oral motor activities. For example, blowing bubbles or blowing bubbles from gum, if they can do it, blowing bubbles with the bubble wands. Have them work on blowing up a balloon. Blowing through a straw, like playing like hockey with a cotton ball on the floor and they blow it through a straw to get it to a certain target, for example. Drinking liquids through a straw. There's a lot of oral motor opportunities when you're using a straw. You can actually extend the length of the straw by having a long straw, or get the super narrow straws, like the coffee stirrers are kind of narrow straws. They have to work their mouth harder, and that gives them that oral heavy work that their mouth needs. Okay, you can also get those goofy, funky straws that have different curvy shapes. That adds more length to the straw, so they have to suck harder, which is a heavy, like a calming input. It's called heavy work for the mouth. Okay, you can also allow them to drink ice cold water. That alerts their mouth. Okay, so there's lots of strategies that we can use for the under and over responsive kids for the olfactory and the gustatory sense. On this slide are some of the resources used to put this together that you can use to get some extra ideas to help your students. Thanks for watching, everybody.